I just want to take a moment to introduce Senator Cardin. Because at the end of the day, when we started this reform agenda, it was more controversial than I think many of you would imagine. And at different points in times, we've faced some resistance, and we've tried to embrace all of our partners in a dialogue about why this approach makes sense. And from his seat on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee as chair, he has advanced human rights around the world, but also taken the time and effort and energy to specifically focus on how we can achieve these goals, how we can establish USAID Forward as a reform agenda that allows us to work more effectively, how we can partner better with a more diverse group of partners here in the United States, including small businesses. And of course, I believe Senator Cardin served on the Small Business Committee for the United States as well, so you have a real champion in Senator Cardin here. But at the end of the day, one of the things I've learned now being in Washington for 3 or 4 years is that, in order to really get anything done, you got to have good ideas and support from the President and the executive branch, and here we're lucky to have that. But you also have to have real leaders in Congress that when sometimes things are tough or unpopular are willing to kind of buck you up, offer some guidance, pave the way, and ensure that we're building the kind of government that is more capable of embracing folks in this room and delivering the kinds of results Americans expect, and doing that with vision and passion. And it's in that spirit that I'm honored to know and consider Senator Cardin a friend and introduce Senator Cardin here to you. Senator, please join us. Thank you.
Well, if you ever get invited to speak, ask Administrator Shaw to introduce you. That was wonderful. Thank you very much. And let me just pause for one moment to thank Administrator Shaw, Mr. Vera, and the men and women who work for USAID, our federal workforce, for the extraordinary work they do every day to advance the interests of America. The work done at USAID is critically important to America's future. It is critical to our national security interests. The work we do in developing a sustainable economy and good governance around the world helps us have a more secure America. It takes the pressure off of our need for our military to intervene in countries. It speaks to American values on humanitarian needs and to speak up what's best about this country. And yes, from an economic point of view, we are developing markets that are going to be important for American jobs. So for all those reasons, the work that you do, Administrator Shaw, and your workforce is critical to this country. So on behalf of Congress, I come here first to thank you. Now, I know Congress has a strange way of thanking our federal employees. But I tell you, you have endured now 3 years of pay freezes. You've seen freezes in the number of people that you can hire to do the work. We've thrown more work on you with less people. And that's not what we should be doing. I had a chance to talk to the leadership in the Senate about how we're going to move forward with federal workers. And I just pause a moment to say thank you, and we're going to fight hard to preserve the federal workforce. We don't want to lose talented people, and we want to attract the very best to public service. And at USAID, you've done that, and we're committed to continuing that tradition in our partnership with you in the United States Congress. But as Administrator Shaw will tell you, he cannot do it alone. And I really admire the way that he has developed partners throughout our country and our economy to help in the mission. And it's nowhere more important than engaging the small business community. So I applaud you for the effort that you make here, your leadership in the office that you hold, to advance opportunities for small business to help us in this critical mission that's so important to America. Administrator Shaw, you said I'm on the Small Business Committee. Let me just tell you, I worked very hard to get on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. I worked hard because I wanted an opportunity to advance human rights globally, and knew that from the Senate Foreign Relations Committee that would give me that opportunity. I also chair the Helsinki Commission, which also involves human rights, because I think that's critically important to America. But for America, countries around the world would not have champions to advance basic rights. And I'm proud of that. So you're applauding our country. Thank you. And I worked very hard to get on the Senate Finance Committee, one of the prestigious committees of the United States Senate. One of the reasons I worked hard, because it deals with international trade, and it deals with areas where I can leverage the U.S. Allowing Russia to enter the WTO. We were able to advance some human rights when we did that. And I'll continue to look for those opportunities. And it's a very important committee. But I worked equally hard to get on the Small Business Committee. There weren't quite as many people seeking that committee. But I asked to serve on the Small Business Committee when I came to the United States Senate. And I was lucky enough to get on that committee. And my reason was pretty simple. The small business is the economic engine of America. That's where job growth takes place. More jobs are created through small business than large companies. But let me tell you something else that small business does. They're the innovators in America. You figure out how to do something better, and you market that. Whether it's manufacturing a product or whether it's providing service or in consulting, you figure out how to get it done in the most efficient way. And that's been the American edge, and why America has become the great economic power that it is, and the great influence we've had. It's because of small businesses. It's because of the people that are in this room today. So I wanted to be here to tell you that this forum combines the two areas that I think are the most important to our country. Small business, the innovators, a growth engine. USAID, which is advancing U.S. goals globally and doing great humanitarian work. And the combination here couldn't be more important. And I just wanted you to know you have an advocate in the United States Senate that will promote this the best that I possibly can. Let me just talk a little bit how USAID can use the talent that's in this room, the small business community. 62 million Americans, 1 out of every 5 is first or second generation American. You understand the world. You know firsthand how people around the world are responding to the challenges of their own individual countries. So diaspora companies become particularly important. You can help bridge between America and the country of your roots. Let me just give you a couple of examples. A few years back, I helped establish in Maryland an African trade office. I did that for many reasons. First of all, our connections to Africa are certainly underdeveloped, and we can do a lot more about American companies partnering with African companies on economic opportunity. But I looked at my state of Maryland and saw so many people with recent roots in Africa, so many businesses with recent roots in Africa, that here we will develop opportunity for job growth here in Maryland, as well as moving forward on goals of America to help develop economies on the continent of Africa. So let me just give you one example of that partnership. Recently, the White House acknowledged Mr. Asiva, who has Ethiopian roots, who started a company in Maryland, Montgomery County, Maryland, called Blessed Coffee. I've had their coffee. It's very good. I promote it. Go out and buy some. Because let me tell you what you're doing when you're buying that coffee, Blessed Coffee. You're helping create jobs in the United States of America, and we need jobs. But that partnership includes Ethiopia in building schools, in clean water for the people of Ethiopia, a health clinic, all benefit from the partnership that was established by Blessed Coffee here in Montgomery County, Maryland, with the country of Ethiopia. That makes sense. That's helping Administrator Shaw and his mission. It's helping economic growth, and it's helping in America's humanitarian mission. The same story can be told over and over again. I always am shameless in pointing out Maryland companies. That's good politics, but it's also, we are very proud of Maryland companies. Mendez, England and Associates, a women-owned business in our state, is doing incredible work in monitoring and evaluating USAID programs. Panagora, but I'm sorry, that's a minority-owned company. Panagora is a woman-owned company in our state doing international development assistance. Camres is a service-disabled vet company doing work in our state on global health areas. And the list goes on and on and on of companies that have made incredible, small companies that have made incredible difference. So I want you to know that Congress understands the importance of small businesses. And we have provided tools for that work. And I'm glad, Administrator Shaw, that you acknowledged Ms. Campbell, Jane Campbell from the Small Business Committee, and Senator Landrieu. There is no stronger advocate on behalf of small business in this country than Mary Landrieu, the senator from Louisiana. I am so proud to be in our caucus meetings as chairmen stand up and promote bills that are moving forward, maybe in agriculture or in health care, and then you'll see Senator Landrieu stand up and say, what are we doing for small business? How are we going to help small business? Because they have different needs. So we have a strategy to help small business, and it started when President Obama was elected to return the SBA to an agency that's an advocate for small business. We provided substantial increases in their budget so that they can fight on your behalf in other agencies. Administrator Shaw, congratulations from going from an F to an A in 2 years. I never did that in college, so that's pretty good. That's pretty, yeah, that deserves a round of applause. And that was done for two reasons. Two reasons. One is that Administrator Shaw wants to do the right thing. He does. And he also understands that engaging small business and make it easier for him to do the right thing for the mission that he has. But he also knows that we're looking at him, that we're watching. And we got the Small Business Administration watching. And you got the Congress looking at agencies, because we know one of the ways that we can really help small businesses is through government procurement. But you know, the big guys sort of like government procurement, and it's not easy to break through. So you have to have a friend that's going to really help. So we set goals. And I appreciate the goals are aspirational to a certain degree, but we need to be on a path to accomplish it. And your goal, as I understand it, is 11% for prime contractors and 26.8% for subcontractors. And we will help you reach those goals. Congress has taken on the bundling issue. Agencies tend to make these contracts, small contracts, big contracts, so they don't have to do as much work. You know, one contract is easier than 3 contracts. But one contract may not allow small companies to participate. Whereas if you become the prime, you control the contract. You're not beholden to some other company that's sort of bringing you in as a favor. So we want prime contracts. We want prime contracts. And we're going to fight for prime contracts. And we know that you have issues on getting credit. We increased dramatically the tools in the SBA on giving loans and credit to small businesses in all different categories, eased up the requirements, lowered the cost. That was intentional. We know we're in tough economic times, and we haven't done enough yet. It's still the #1 issue I hear when I travel throughout Maryland from small businesses is the difficulty in getting credit. So we got to take a look at what we did in Dodd-Frank and make sure that community banks are in fact lending money to small businesses. They're not doing enough of that. So we're committed to working with you. We passed the SBIR bill. for innovative companies. We have increased the surety bond limits. I'm very proud about that. It's now permanent. And we are indexed it to inflation, which will certainly $6.5 million, which will help us, again, give you the tools you need. I have legislation to increase the government set-asides. We have counseling to the agencies. I could go, the list goes on and on and on. But I wanted you to know today that you have a friend in the United States Congress which is going to provide the tools necessary so that you, in fact, can help. So here's the challenges we face in America. Our challenges, as I mentioned before, is that we are in a very dangerous world. Just look what's happening in North Korea today. Look what's happening in Syria. Look what's happening in Iran. Look at America's spending of trillions of dollars in our war against terror in Afghanistan and Iraq. This is a dangerous world. We need to keep America safer. And we know that starts with a strong military, and we have the strongest military in the world. We have the best soldiers and the best armaments any place in the world, right here in America. But it requires us to have countries that are more stable. That's absolutely critical. And the way to do that is through reaching out in partnership with other countries for sustainable economies. People have hope. One of the problems in North Korea today is that their people are being starved. Their economic future is very, very poor. There's little hope. And when there's little hope, people do extreme things. We've got to offer hope. I was just on the phone earlier today with a Canadian friend who was looking at what we did on the extractive industries in America. Working with Senator Lugar, I was able to get transparency because we know countries have mineral wealth, but it becomes a curse. Why? Because that wealth is taken from the people by its leaders and used for corruption. Now, why do we have an interest in that? Because the poverty of that nation causes instability in that nation, meaning their mineral sources, which are important to us, can be lost. And worse than that, we could be engaged in the military conflict because of that instability. Well, we've got to correct that. That's why we passed the provisions in Dodd-Frank that require transparency from extractive industries so we can track the money to help you with your mission. But it comes back to USAID, and USAID cannot do its work without your help. And that's why we have this conference today. In this Congress, I will be chairing the East Asia and Pacific subcommittee of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. President Obama has announced his rebalance to Asia. Why? Because Asia is where the growth is at this particular moment. We expect that 50% of the growth in the next decade in the economy outside the United States will take place in Asia. The United States has to be a more active player. Well, 6 decades ago, our engagement in Asia was basically military. But after World War II, we decided, why don't we make an investment? Why don't we see whether we can help Japan and Korea, 2 countries that desperately needed USAID. They couldn't make it on their own. They needed America. Their people had no hope, and we were there. Today we have 2 strong allies helping us in our war against terror, helping us in so many different ways. And by the way, buying American products, great markets for helping to create jobs here in America. Well, the problems in Asia today is that we have some of the most populous democratic countries, but we have some of the most totalitarian regimes in the world. We need to reach out. USAID needs to be active in the rebalance program to Asia. And they can't do it without you. Can't do it without the small business community. I admire so much Administrator Shaw's vision about how he wants to engage partners in carrying out the mission, how he wants to engage small businesses, how he wants to engage our academic institutions, our NGOs, because that's the way you leverage and accomplish the results that need to be accomplished. Well, this country is facing an economic problem. We haven't passed the budget. We're in sequestration. We've got to get beyond that. We've got to get to a sustainable budget, and it's not sustainable today. We're spending too much and we don't have enough revenue, and we've got to figure out a way to bring this into balance. So let me tell you another reason why I'm here today. Because the way you bring that into balance is that you create more jobs here in America. And what you're doing is going to create more jobs here in America. So this is a win-win-win situation. What you're doing is so important for American values. What you're doing is so important for America's security. And what you're doing is so important for our economy. So I wanted to be here today to let you know that you have a partner and friend. And when I look out in this room and see the people that are here, you give me great hope that we indeed will achieve those missions. Thank you, and it's great to be with you today.
Thank you so much, Senator Cardin and Dr. Shah, for those inspiring words. We really, really appreciate your support, your commitment, and your leadership on the committee and on the Hill.